Hi, in this video we're going to be showing you how to assemble this bunk bed. But before we get started, here's a few things to keep in mind. Assembly should take about 100 minutes with 2 people and a little bit longer with 1. Make sure you have a Phillips head screwdriver and just be sure all the pieces are facing the right way as you're putting it together and you'll do great. We are going to focus on the trickier parts and go quickly through the easier steps, so make sure you pause the video and complete all the steps as we go. With that said, let's get into it. For step 1, just be sure that you insert all of the dowels into the correct pieces, but we're going to start with step 2 and start putting together the ladder. We'll stand this piece up so that these grooves are facing upwards, and then we'll insert our piece 3 onto the inside. So we'll put in all of our pieces on one side first, and then attach the other side, making sure that this cutout is facing upwards. And then we can put in all of our bolts. All right, once we have these connected, we'll move on to steps 3 and 4, and we'll be attaching pieces 5 and 4. We'll attach piece 5, making sure that this groove is facing down the ladder. We'll slide it in across this piece. Just make sure that this hole lines up with this piece here. Do the same thing again for piece 4. And then we'll secure these with bolts on both sides and on the top here. All right, once we have those attached, we'll move on to steps 5 and 6. So we'll slide this piece over. And then we'll attach pieces 6 and 7 to the outside edge of this piece here. We'll insert piece 7 horizontally into these 2 holes, and then we can screw that in with our bolt. Next, we'll attach piece 6, making sure it's vertical and that this little groove right here is upwards. And then we can screw in our bolt. All right, next we'll attach piece 8. We'll slide this piece along the grooves on the inside here. You want to make sure it fits into the groove at the bottom here as well. All right, once that's in, then we'll attach piece 9 onto the top here. Now with this, just make sure that this groove is facing the same way as the groove on the other piece. So we'll line this up with our dowels and then we can screw it in. Okay, now we're good to move on. In step 8, we'll be putting together pieces 10, 11, 12, and 13. These are also 12 and 13, in case you didn't know. Now with pieces 10 and 11, just make sure you have them with these grooves facing upwards and on the same side for both pieces. And then we can fit in pieces 12 and 13. Once we have all of our pieces together, then we can go ahead and put in all of our bolts. Just make sure that you skip this one here on piece 11. Okay, we're good to move on. In step 9, we'll be attaching the side rails. And with this piece, just make sure you have it so that these grooves are facing inwards. And we'll line up our first rail. In this step, it can be helpful to have another person, but you can do it by yourself. Just make sure you carefully lean this piece over so that it lines up with your side rail while it's resting. And then we can insert our barrel nuts, just making sure that this hole is horizontal with the other one so the bolt can go into it. And then we can insert our bolts, just holding these barrel nuts in place. All right, once that's secured, then we can do the same thing again on the other side. Okay, once those are secured, then we can go ahead and move on to step 10 and attach the other side. Once again with this piece, just make sure that you have the grooves facing inwards, and then we can line up our side rails. And then we can screw these together. Okay, now we're good to move on. In steps 11 and 12, we'll be attaching our first top rail. So we'll pick up piece 15 and slide it down into these grooves. Once we have that on, then we can screw it together. Next, we'll move on to step 13 and we'll attach pieces 7 and 12 onto the 2 sides here. We'll put piece 7 on this side and screw it in. And we'll put piece 12 on this side with the sticker facing inwards. And we'll screw this one in as well. All right, and then we'll move on to steps 14 and 15 and we'll attach piece 16 onto this top here. Next, we'll put in our bolts and secure this. Okay, we're good to move on to step 16 and we'll be attaching bolts into the front of the piece right here and 2 on the other side. All right, next we'll insert our paper roll holder onto this side of the piece. Stick this first into the one side and then slide it in along here. All right, and then we're good to move on. In step 17, we'll be putting in our slats. We'll start by lining up our first one with the very edge of these wood pieces in here. Then we can screw that in. And then for our next slat, we'll put in our spacers. Push the next slat up against it. Once you have the screw part way in, then we'll go ahead and move the spacer so it doesn't get stuck. All right, and then we'll repeat that process for the rest of our slats, and then we're all done. We hope this video was helpful for you in assembling this new bunk bed. For more guides, tips, and tricks, head on over to walkeredison.com.